I was absolutely not free in any capacity. And I created a very intensive job for myself right on the onset of the year.
Today, I'm excited to be here with Ryan. He's the founder and owner at Casa, a property management co-hosting company that's based out of Austin, Texas.
As we grow and scale, we are starting to add more competitive advantages.
If you had to start all over again, what, if anything, would you do differently?
Focus a lot more on my mindset. Being able to approach a client with the thought that you can serve them.
You haven't figured out the infrastructure yet, and yet you have to go and get homeowners. How have you broken through that despite, the infrastructure not being 1,000% there?
We need to make sure we are positioning ourselves as an expert. We need to be confident that we can handle it.
What have you learned about how to go out there and get those homeowners?
There's several strategies to do that. There's no limits on how many different ways you can get a contract.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and really where we bring together operators, leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, and founders in the vacation rental space so they can tell us about their stories, their lessons that they have learned along the way, as well as perhaps some of the mistakes that they have made along the way so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm excited to be here with Ryan. He's the founder and owner at Casa, a property management co-hosting company that's based out of Austin, Texas. So, Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time to be here on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Appreciate it, Sebastian. Grateful to be here, and hopefully we can add some value to the
Love
listeners
it.
today.
Definitely, that's
Yeah.
the goal. So Ryan, let me start by asking before we talk about the story of how you've gotten to where you are today and the timeline and the context. If you had to start all over again in the process of building your co-hosting property management business, and you could do something differently, what, if anything, would you do differently?
What I would do is focus a lot more on my mindset. A ton of the success that I've had, I think it can be attributed to how my mindset has developed over the last year. And a lot of that is through the program, which I'm sure we'll talk about in more depth, but figuring out what is I actually want out of starting this business, and then making sure I'm able to have the right mindset to go about taking the actions to get to what I want. And I can give a very practical example, but I want to say that to be more, um, you know, almost vague to because it can apply to anyone. But a practical example is just being able to approach a client with the thought that you can serve them rather than, when you're early on starting a business, you can feel really tight around money, around getting clients, all that. But if you make a little shift into, all right, I'm here to serve this person and add true value to this person, then I'm coming at a place where we're trying to structure a win-win now. And people can feel that rather than coming from a place of more desperation. I really need the money. I need this contract. I need you as a client to get my business off the ground. So shifting that mindset, it took me a few months at the very beginning, but now that I do truly believe that I'm able to serve owners and investors, I feel much more confident having these conversations. I found it has led to much more success. And that's something I'm glad I figured out, but I
Mm-hmm.
wish I had that at the very beginning. It's harder at the beginning because it is tighter. Maybe you're tighter on money, tighter on time, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of, I think, success in entrepreneurship from what I've seen for successful entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
is the mindset around it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's what I would
I
say
love
is
it.
is
I love
something.
it because
eh,
we get into this business, right, with a lot of ambition, expectations, like we want to grow all that stuff. And then
Mhm.
I think if I'm not mistaken, there's a way to refer to these different stages. At first is uninformed optimism, right? So you don't have the
Yes.
information, but you're optimistic because you don't have the information. Then
Mhm.
you go out into the marketplace and you find out that like it's tough, right? There's a lot of things to figure out. There's a lot of moving pieces. So you have, I think that's where you get to informed pessimism. Like you start
Yeah.
to face a wall, and unless you can break through that wall with mindset, it becomes challenging because you're like, okay, this is harder than I thought. um, and then of course, as you go through that valley of despair where a lot of people quit and start something
Mhm.
new, you might get to a point where you're like, okay, actually, this is not as hard. I can figure it out. I just need to learn, fine tune a couple of things, right? And you
Mhm.
kind of start having that informed optimism, all the way to the point where you're killing it, you're doing great, right? But I think that
Right.
if you don't figure out mindset, it's very easy to stay stuck in that
Mhm.
phase of pessimism, because you just had a little bit of feedback from the market and realize that it was harder than you thought.
Mhm.
And what I find interesting is, like, I'm sure there's people that have managed to grow their business despite not having figured out this mindset component. But then it's like
Right.
it's this thing that sticks with you, right? So like, unless you figure it out, you're always gonna have like a limit, to
That's
to how
exactly
much you
it.
can grow.
That's what I was gonna say is, of one way or another, the mindset work or any limitations you might have, specifically through your beliefs about yourself or your business or your capabilities, will come out. So for me, the sooner you start the mindset work, and it's a practice. Like this is something I can share more about this, but I practice this every day, the mindset work and talking, like going through my self-image and writing down my goals and visualizing that kind of stuff. But the sooner you start, the sooner you can uncover some of those self-limiting beliefs
Hmm.
and start to work around them or through them.
Yeah.
And
And I think there's
yeah,
going to
they
be
do
people
come out
listening to
eventually.
this. Yeah, people, it comes down. Yeah, it comes out eventually for sure. And I think like there's going to be people listening to this that are going to take this one of two ways, right? Either they're
Mhm.
already big believers in this idea of mindset, so they're going to be like, yeah, mindset is great. Or they're skeptical and are like, wow, mindset, come on, like I don't need that, I don't
Yep.
need to work on that, like why would I need to spend time on my mindset? So let's break that down, Ryan. Like,
Mhm.
why do you think that is so important? What have you learned throughout your different coaching and mastermind programs around specifically developing mindset? And you mentioned you have some specific activities to you do a daily. If you can tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that to put this in a practical way, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I wanna preface this by saying this is all relatively new to me, the mindset work. So, like, I'm no longer in a W-2 job, and I quit that W-2 job at the end, actually, just this time last year. So, last week, I had my one-year anniversary for being self-employed. So, when I was in the jobs and, like, up until the last few months, I was not doing any mindset work. I definitely like, counted it out. I was like, "This is kind of hippie." It feels a little woo-woo. Um, but as I got through, I joined a mastermind program called Short-Term Rental Secrets at the very beginning of this entrepreneurship journey because I knew I needed mentorship. I didn't w I could have figured this out alone, I'm sure, but that, I feel like, would have really delayed my growth. So I wanted to take the expedited journey of whether it's paid or unpaid mentorship. I went with paid because I was ready to go and I was ready to go now. So I didn't want to take the time to go find this unpaid mentor, and there was already a program. So I joined that at the beginning of the year, and then that's when it really uncovered how much mindset affects your overall life, but and practically in business is just your overall success in your business. Um, when we're talking about mindset, a lot of it comes down to our beliefs. And that's beliefs about ourselves, our company, our relationships, our health. We have a belief about everything. And we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind, which are your core beliefs about everything you experience, dictate 90 to 95% of your actions and behaviors. So understanding how your mind works and how your subconscious works has been very impactful on my my ability to focus on what my beliefs are and then see which ones of those might be limiting and which one of those might be serving me and then focus more on the ones that are serving me. So that's and it's such a it's a deep hole when you get into the mindset stuff because it
Yeah,
goes
no,
there's so much
there's
information.
so much that can go into it. I like that you started by saying, okay, the one belief I had to break, and I think that's very practical for everyone listening is, you know, you're serving your clients, you're doing them a favor type of thing.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's huge. But it's also hard, especially in that in those early stages, going back to what we were saying before, because you have this imposter syndrome, because you're like, you
Hmm.
haven't figured out the infrastructure yet, and yet you have to, you know, go and get homeowners, as if you had that infrastructure in place. Of course, you
Right.
don't want to lie, you don't want to say you have something you don't have, but you do
Hmm.
believe and have that vision on the fact that, you know, this is what you're going to stand up for as a company. But the reality is
Yeah.
that you're figuring out on the go.
Yeah.
What have you found work to break that particular belief of, like, you know, you are serving your clients and potential homeowners? How have you how have you broken through that, despite, you know, the infrastructure not being 1,000% there, because you're building it on the go, right?
Yeah. Especially client number one. Like we do sales before systems. That's something we focus on because the systems are great when you have the properties to manage or
Hmm.
co-host. But
Hmm.
until we have that, we don't have a business. We need to
Hmm.
generate some income.
Hmm.
And the systems will follow once we get some contracts signed for
Hmm.
management or co-host agreements.
Hmm.
But that very first one, and it's something I now am a part of coaching in the program for short-term rental secrets, is going from that 0 to 1, starting from scratch and be like, I don't really know everything,
Hmm.
but we need to make sure we are positioning ourselves even then as an expert,
Hmm.
and we need to be confident that we can handle it. And again, this like I don't want to go into the mindset stuff too much, but it just starts with, do you truly believe you can add value to this person? And then a lot of the times it's a self-limiting belief because maybe you're worried you're not capable of doing it, or
Hmm.
someone can do it better than you. And it's coming comes down to you believing in, do you believe in your ability to serve them? And at the beginning, you need to work on it extra hard because the odds are you're going to tell yourself that you can't do this, or you can't do it better than someone else,
Hmm.
or you don't actually know what you're doing. Well, that's where the program helped me a ton is you have every resource you could possibly need to know what you're doing. And you need to understand that like through this community, through the resources in it and all the different modules, like you can figure all that stuff out within a week. You just need to make sure you're going in with the right headspace to be like, I can actually serve you. And here's why. It's because I have resource A, B, and C.
Hmm.
And even though this is my first one, and this is actually, it goes into kind of the value proposition. If you're a brand new co host or property manager and you're competing against bigger management companies like Casa, like Evolve, and or Avance, whoever it is, how much attention is their property going to get when you were the manager of one property? And sometimes, you know, I sometimes you can market that you don't have properties as to use that as your selling point. Sometimes you can just come across as an expert and know what you're talking about, and maybe the client will never ask how many properties you have. But if they do, I would recommend being honest. If you have zero, say I have zero. But going back to the point of how much attention can you give that property owner's property or
Hmm.
listing? relative to a bigger company. And like there's always a way to spin it
Mm-hmm.
to your benefit. So that's the one thing, that's one of the things we talk about a lot in the program is like what is your competitive advantage? Because in any situation you have one. You just need to make sure we're looking at it from a situation of this is my benefit, this isn't my burden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Love it.
that's
No,
one of the
that makes
biggest
sense.
things starting out.
And what have you identified as your competitive edge, competitive advantage that you want to go out there and try to, you know, continue to position yourself um, based on?
For the management company,
Yeah.
right now, I think we still focus a lot on being boots on the ground. And as we grow and scale, like we are starting to add more competitive advantages. Like we just took on a revenue management partner to handle all the revenue management on the back end, and they are experts in that. So all of our property owners are now going to have access and be served by this revenue management team that we hire and we pay for from our management company pays for their service. So that's another value proposition. But I think what really helped me get started was being boots on the ground. We will take care of your property because we are here. Some people try to go the remote route, and I think it's very possible to find success from, if you want to do this in any market, if you want to go to the Breckenridge or the Vale, these other more popular markets, Scottsdale, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, and you live in that market, you can make it work. But me being, hey, I'm here, we're face to face. I'm gonna be the one showing up at your property. That's at the beginning. Now we're really we work on outsourcing that and delegating a lot of the responsibilities as you grow. But
Mm-hmm.
um, that's one of the biggest value propositions is our team is local. We're considered a boutique management company
Yeah,
because we are serving you with more concentration and more attention than any other property manager can.
absolutely.
And
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
we prove that.
No, and you have that edge,
Yeah.
especially when you're boutique, like you're saying, because you don't have thousands of clients to serve or hundreds, so that allows you
Yeah.
to make sure you go the extra mile with each one of your clients, and I think that's what's needed, right, at those early stages. I think
Hmm.
there's I've heard this before where it's like you want to think about scalability in a business, but you don't want to think about scalability too early on. Because if you think about
Right.
scalability so early on, then there's all these things that you could be doing and should probably be doing for your clients that
Yeah.
that are not scalable. Like if you cannot do this with 500 properties, but like you can do this
Yeah.
today, right? So thinking, oh, I'm not going to do this non-scalable thing today because it's not going to be scalable in the future. There's a point after which you have to start making those tough decisions of saying this, we're going to have to cut on this, cut on that. But I think
Yeah.
that is a future stage. I think that early on is, make sure you get clients, like you said, sales, does come first, because without those first
Hmm.
few owners there's no business. And then how do we
Yeah.
make sure that they stay, and that their expectations are
Right.
exceeded? Because if they do
Yeah.
stay and expectations are exceeded, now you have that social proof to go out and get more, homeowners, and that starts to have this ball rolling where you get more momentum.
Yes.
So, anyways, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your background, Ryan. So, you managed to replace your W-2 income relatively fast. So,
Yeah.
walk us through, first of all, the process of quitting your W-2. Like,
Hmm.
was that a tough decision? Was that something that for you was a no-brainer? And then also, from there to replacing that W-2 income with your property management business, how strategic was that in terms of reaching that objective in 10 months versus kind of just figuring it out and just happened to happen in 10 months?
Yeah, I like that question. So I'll go to like the like kind of the same thing I was bringing up earlier. Like last year, I was in that W-2 role. I was working for actually a prop tech company where I was doing the outreach. So I was essentially doing the highest money making activity for the company, and it was a management company. So I was starting to see the contracts related to, and specifically a short term rental prop tech company. Um, I'm going to leave the name out of it, but it's still a great company. I just was seeing these contracts, and I was doing the outreach side, the biz dev, and all that, and there was a whole nother sector for the operations. But I'm looking at this, and I've always, since a younger age, always wanted to build something on my own. I, it's still hard for me to pinpoint where that came from. Um, I think a lot of it comes from really craving freedom and the ability to do things on my own terms. So like a lot of it, like for me, is travel. Like that's something I'm very passionate about doing. And I really did not like being told I only had a certain amount of days each year to go and experience the world and do what I wanted to do. So I always had a little vendetta against like PTO and the structured, you know, job and W-2 lifestyle. So there was always something in me, and I had this list of notes on my phone for like 30 different business ideas since I was in college, and that grew to like 200 business ideas. So I had all these ideas, and I was just waiting for like the moment, I guess, which now I've learned like you can create that moment. You don't necessarily need to wait around for that to come. And for me, where that switch flipped was I was working for this prop tech company, and then I started learning more about real estate entrepreneurship, and I was spending very little time doing what I was supposed to be doing for that company. And I was spending a lot of time listening to podcasts, reading books. Yeah, because it was a remote company, I was going out to coffee chats with entrepreneurs midday. So doing all the wrong things for that company, but the right things for me. And then I can't confidently say that I just quit. Like, it was more of a mutual agreement that I was not doing my job for them. So it came to the point where it was like, "All right, I can go and apply for another job, or this is the time where I start this business." And I wasn't entirely confident if it would be co-hosting, or I thought about doing, home flipping and renovations, wholesaling, a few different, um, entrepreneurship paths within real estate, and then I realized I wasn't gonna have any income. So, going to something like a home flip where you're relying on these bigger payouts after a few months didn't make as much sense. So, I looked at my situation, I said, "I need capital. I need capital soon, very soon. How can I create a cash flowing business?" And I really wanted to focus on a residual income business where I could stack my income each year. So that's when co-hosting and management came into my life as this option. I actually saw an Instagram ad from Mike Sjogren, who owns and operates Short Term Rental Secrets, this mastermind that I'm in and now coach for. And it felt like some serendipity where I clicked on the ad and they reached out to me because their sales team is efficient. And then we started having the conversations. I decided to sign up, and um, it's been a very fruitful past year. It was just me making the decision. It all
Mhm.
started with like truly accepting that I'm going to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
and then taking the actions
I
to get
like
to
it.
it. Like really putting my head down. Did I miss anything from that
Well,
question? I think there
well,
was another
yeah, no,
part.
you're right. It was like a two-side question. So that definitely answers, the question as to like, okay, how you got into this, what were you doing before? Was it hard to quit your job? Now, in terms of like going out there and starting your own business and replacing that W-2 income in a matter of, I think,
Right.
ten months, couple of things
Yeah.
there. One is, before we go into the numbers side of it, right? Of whether that's
Mhm.
revenue for the business, or gross bookings, or actual profits, because that's gonna
Yeah.
make a big difference too. Like, let's talk
Right.
about, you leave the W-2 because you're seeking more freedom. You want to travel the world. You want to control your own destiny. I think that that's the narrative we hear a lot of when we talk about aspiring entrepreneurs, people that want to get into the entrepreneurship world. Now,
Yep.
what I also find interesting, and I ask this question a lot in the show, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, is what's that actual reality of what entrepreneurship, is like, because you have this idea, right? And then you go into it and give it a try. Like, do you actually feel more freedom? Do you actually feel like you have more time to travel the world? Or, what's been
Yeah,
the,
that's a
like,
great
so
question.
far? Yeah.
It was quite the opposite. I started this like I would always use when I did have PTO, I would use that time. Um Over this last year, because it has been so focused on building this business and now building the coaching side of it and consulting side of it. I think I took maybe one vacation and it was not long. And beforehand I would take one or two, maybe sometimes up to a month of scattered vacations throughout the year. And I felt like, especially at the beginning in the hospitality business where it's so customer centric and focused on the guest, and for me, it's a dual sided marketplace. I want to focus on the guest and the owner. So even so, double the reason to be boots on the ground, be focused, be on call whenever you need. That's because that's one of the I think traps or one of the bottlenecks of the hospitality business is feeling like you always need to be on call. And I was absolutely not free in any capacity. And I created a very intensive job for myself right on the onset of the year where I was, one, having to learn all the nuances of operating a short term rental business. And then two, trying to manage these properties simultaneously, get clients, make sure the cleaners are doing a good job, maintenance is taken care of. Essentially, doing the all-in-one solopreneur uh, responsibility package, and it took up so much time, and it was stressful, and it was not glamorous. But like I did the work. Like it was like there were months and weeks and days where it got more difficult, and like it took me up until only the last few months to be at a more comfortable financial situation with the business. But at the beginning, when you're making $1,000 a month, or not even that, when you don't even have the clients yet, you're just feeling strapped. You're like, I can't even have fun. Like I wasn't like, you can't go out, you can't enjoy life the same way because you feel like you're in this like survival mode. Even though really we're not. Like it's not like there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing us. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
we're all in a much more comfortable environment than we humans have previously been, but it's
for
like
sure.
that's how it feels. That's our version of that. And it took me a second to get over that. And now I'm at a place where I'm able to implement the systems and hire the virtual assistants and scale and be more comfortable taking trips. But I'm
Yeah.
still working on that. And the first, for me, 8 to 9 months, it just felt like there was very,
Hmm.
very little freedom,
Yeah, no,
even
and
though
I and
I
I
was
like to
technically
talk
calling my
about that
shots.
because, like, I wanna make sure that, a lot of the people that perhaps listen to this, um, I already have been doing this for a couple of years, so they might have gone through this phase. But even though, you went through the initial stages, um, like, there's still work. Like, there's still a lot of
Yeah,
work. The work just changes, but it doesn't go away. So I just
yeah,
I just want to make sure that anyone that gets into this business doesn't do it, with the wrong idea of, like, this is passive income, and, like, it's going to be fully automated. Like, it's sexy, it
yeah,
sounds sexy, but the reality is there are things that will be, automate, that you can automate and outsource, but there will be things that you won't be able to, automate or outsource. And, you know it's that constant battle of, like, over hiring versus under hiring, and, same for your tech
hmm,
stack. So, like, you're constantly in that survival mode, so to speak. But definitely the education that you, are getting, gives you an edge in maybe
mm,
shortening that learning curve, and maybe getting to
yeah,
a point where maybe, most companies would get to a certain point in 5 years. Well, you can get to that point in a year, 2 years, because you have a
yeah,
playbook to follow, right? And I think that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about the the,
yeah.
the playbook precisely. Like, what is, we talked about mindset. What are other things that, more tactical, or let's say more concrete, that you have also learned about, whether that's homeowner acquisition. Let's talk about homeowner acquisition for a second. Like, what have you learned about how to go out
Sure.
there and get those homeowners?
Yeah, I'll go through I'll get to that. I'll start with the playbook because I
Sure.
think that's helpful. Because
Definitely.
like, if you were to sign up for any coaching program, like, usually there's gonna be some structure, whether it's through, like, a Kajabi or a school or something like that. But for STR Secrets, like, the first thing we focus on is, like, admin. Do you have access to all the resources? And then we need to set up a business for you, and we go over, like, it's called the clarity module. So what's your business name? What's your logo going to be? Do you have a website? Do you have your LLC set up? Are you going to use business bank account? Usually yes. Do you have insurance? Let's set up. It's like setting a foundation for the business, because that's what we always focus on before we get into the acquisition of clients. But then once we have that, then we really focus on what you were just asking about, like owner acquisition, and what does that look like? It's it's really like any building anything. Like, you want to set a foundation, and you want to make that foundation very strong before we start going out into the world and pitching our services, and making sure that we fully understand, one, it's set up logistically, but also we fully understand the value we're bringing. And this is where you get into a little bit more of the mindset stuff, but also just like, it's sales and marketing. So we want to have an elevator pitch as we're talking to people. We want to have a value proposition. We want to have some marketing collateral. So, like, a credibility package, for example, a few pages on your company, what we do, who we serve. A lot of people are wondering what's the fee look like for management. If we work together, everyone wants to know how much it costs, right? So we want to prove, like, all that we do and that we do it well, but then also we have presentations for what does the structure look like for the partnership. And then if we're getting into owner acquisition, there's several strategies to do that. Like, there's no limits on how many different ways you can get a contract. I got a contract recently from playing pickleball. I never thought that's how I would get a client, but we were playing pickleball. They ended up owning an Airbnb that they didn't want to manage anymore. It was stressing them out. They didn't have the time. They didn't want to manage it. And it just so happened to be a high performing Airbnb in a market that I managed for. So that's one way. I mean, but really, like, to go over a few strategies. The first one that I like to talk about with my students is, who do we already know? And also, I skipped one step. Which market are we going to manage in? We need to be very selective with choosing a market to start this business in. And I have experienced some students or some other operators try to really diversify which markets they're in. I personally would have a harder time with that. I want to go an inch wide, mile deep sort of thing. So I'm focused heavily on one market rather than, I think, more lightly in other markets. So once we have the market, once we have the business set up, then we're going to just go right into sales. I think having a CRM is very crucial from day one. So whether it's HubSpot, money.com, there's 20 others, maybe 50 others. But having that, and then starting to have conversations with people that you might be able to serve, right? I want to, like, continue to frame it like that. But it starts always with who's in the market that you already know. And for me, I in Austin, I started going to meetups early on. Even when I was at my W-2 job, I was going to real estate meetups. I was doing these coffee chats. I was networking like crazy. So I already had some contacts on my phone. So I go and I start calling all them and explaining them, this is what I do. I give that elevator pitch we've already worked on. We manage properties for second homeowners and real estate investors to allow them to achieve passive income through short-term rentals. We do the management and operations, and we send them a check at the end of every month. So it truly is passive for them. So something like that, explaining what your business does, and then start to build that CRM, build the contacts, and then we can get into really several different strategies. A lot of people, I found success with going to agents, because you're going to see a lot of deal flow. with agents, and not every agent is offering a short-term rental management service. Most of them don't. And we can provide a lot of value to agents for their buyers if the buyers want to look at investment properties and they want to have an understanding of all their options, whether it's midterm rental numbers, short-term rental numbers. They might want to look at rent by the room numbers, long-term rental numbers, but we can really target that STR, MTR revenue and how much they can bring in. So we're adding value to their buyers. We add values to the sellers if they want to market their property, if it is a potential um, high performing short term rental, that can be put in the marketing copy on the MLS of the listing. We can go into AirDNA, Rabu, whatever data source you want, and then go figure out what are some projections for the short term revenue potential. And then the agents can now have that as another tool to help sellers. And then agents are also typically the ones hearing, we might want to move, we might want to sell, maybe we lease, and they can provide more optionality to all their clients. So going to these agents that didn't even realize how much potential there is in the short-term rental space, or how passive it can be for their clients, or how much it can help their clients have the options they need to make a decision, or the information they need to make a decision, they're gonna have that conversation with you. And they're already seeing so many buyers and sellers and real estate owners that you can get plugged in and get tons of business from just one agent relationship. And then imagine if you're reaching out to multiple agents. So that's just, I mean, and that's just one strategy, right? Like we can go to, there's also long-term property managers that don't manage short-term rentals. You can go straight to the owner. There's the UI method that STR Secrets coined with going to the Casa and Evolve managed properties and trying to find those owners of the underperforming properties, and then come on, and you're their knight in shining armor that comes in, and you can go and prove to them that you can make more money and operate it much better than these larger operators that have a harder time giving owners properties the attention they deserve. So it's like
And there's
there's
going to be
another
a lot of
strategy.
properties there coming into the market, probably. I mean, there
Yeah,
already are, but most
it's
likely more so.
crazy. It's crazy how many, just the students and members of STR Secrets, how many properties they've taken from Vacasa and Evolve because the owners were so frustrated in their previous services. And then the students in this group were coming in and they are blowing the numbers that the owner was previously getting with Vacasa or Evolve out of the water. And then the service is the next level because we're putting so much attention and time and energy into these properties. So that's been a huge way to get clients and form of success for the students in this group. I personally have barely even done that method. Most of my leads and owner acquisition have come through agents, other property managers, word of mouth. I started a meetup here in Austin for short-term rental operators and owners. So I got a few leads that way, just being very, again, boots on the ground, active in the market, and positioning myself as an expert in the
Mhm.
Austin and Hill Country short-term rental real estate market. And then also one other thing, and this is, I'm just throwing all these different streams of potential business development at you, but like the digital marketing. So setting up uh, a Yelp, a Google My Business. A lot of operators I know get clients from Facebook, just like Airbnb Facebook groups. Um, but for me, like Google My Business, for example, I learned how valuable reviews are, especially in a service business. And for the most part, I think majority of these hospitality businesses are service businesses. So whether you're looking at a boutique hotel, an Airbnb, or the management company, people are going to look up what the reviews are. And people give a lot of weight to how good the reviews are. And I mean, you look at even guests. What do they look at? They want to see 5-star reviews on Airbnb, VRBO, whatever marketing platform you're using. But that's the same with owners when they want to bring on an operator. They're going to go see how, like, what do other operators think? How many other operators use this person? Are they getting good reviews? What are other people saying? And I'm on Google My Business. I've gotten several leads from people just calling me after reading my reviews.
Mhm.
And that all goes back to when you do have clients, you need to make sure you're doing a really good job for them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I was going to
So
go to, because it comes down to quality of service and quality of product. because you can't fake those reviews. I mean, I
Absolutely.
guess you could try to buy them, but like it's not going to be sustainable, and it's going to be clear that
Yeah.
they're fake. And like, how long are you going to be able to do that for anyway?
Yeah.
Versus just doing things well from the get go, focusing on quality, focusing on excellence of service,
Mhm.
quality standards and whatnot. Because I always say this in the show, but you only market because no, you only sell because you don't know how to market, and you only market because you don't know how to do product or service. Alex Formosi talks a lot about that one.
Mm.
So I really find that I really find that to be an interesting framework for people to
Yeah.
understand that no matter how good of a job you do at attracting leads, if you don't
Yeah.
deliver, that
Yep.
will be seen in those reviews, and then doesn't matter what you
Without a
do,
doubt.
you won't be able to grow. So I will continue to insist on that here in the show, because as we see more and more pressure from OTAs, uh, to make sure that quality is in place, and sometimes even to the extent of becoming extreme, and sometimes even unfair with larger operators, because like when you have a large portfolio, one bad review can kill your entire
Yeah.
profile, and that times sometimes that's unfair, and sometimes
Mhm.
it's just the way that those averages are calculated. But at the end of the day, like it is the name of the game. Like we cannot go around it. So listen, Ryan,
Yeah.
final thoughts on just basically kind of wrapping up the lessons you've had up until now. You've shared a lot already, but is there
Mhm.
anything else that you think is like a must know, or must keep in mind for anyone that's either looking to start a proper management business or looking to grow one, that you've learned from either your experience so far or from the courses that you have purchased, which by the way are extremely legit courses, right? Like maybe you can touch
Yeah.
on how
Yeah, I
legit those
know.
are.
I was skeptical at first because there's so many gurus and coaching programs and courses. I owe most of my success to the course I joined, and that's not even I'm detaching that from trying to sell anything. I'm not even trying to sell anything, but like that without the mentorship and the accountability, entrepreneurship, you like I'm glad you put light on this of the reality of it because it's not always sexy. Like eventually, once you do the work and take the actions, you do like it does require a lot of work and time and energy, and there are very good days and there's very bad days. But like eventually, you can actually get to that lifestyle that you hear about, and I feel like I'm turning the corner to being able to really like lean into the freedom that I've built for myself through like obtaining these properties and building the income to go do these travels and exciting experiences. But it all started with I think if someone's in a job, and I have a lot of people reach out to me now that are in jobs that want to get out of that job, it really starts with a decision. Like you need to make a decision if you're going to lean into this journey or not. Because if you're like, it's so and it's hard, right? Especially if you're already in a decent job and you're comfortable. You need to find that burning desire, and maybe that desire comes from a life event. A lot of the times, you see a traumatic event lead to a lot of success on the other side of it because that's what it took for them to build that burning desire to get something else or leads do something different with their life. But when you're in a more comfortable job, it's like figure out what you want. Like, that's what helped me a lot. It's like, create a burning desire around something that you really, really want. And a lot of the times, people are limiting themselves when they don't need to be. They're whether that's from their nurture or just things they've been told by their parents or friends. That a lot of that stuff limits you, but if you took time to think about what you really wanted, like, we all have the same 24 hours, and there are people that are going out and getting the things that they dreamed of and they wanted, and there's people that are still stuck in their job, not where they wanna be, and they're frustrated. So, like, take time, like, really lean into reflecting and figuring out what you want, and you, more likely than not, or maybe the listener, as in you, will go figure out that where you are is not going to get you to where you wanna be. So we need to reverse engineer. Let's say you want to live this great lifestyle, and everyone has their own version of what they want. But let's say you want to live this great lifestyle where you have some fancy cars, you go on vacations throughout the year, you have that dream home for you and your family. What does it actually look like? Like, we can get really technical with it too. We can go both ways and have it be more figurative, but also really objective. Like, those things do not come cheaply. Like, things are expensive now. And how much will that lifestyle cost? And then look at where you're at now. Is that going to afford you where you want to be? For me, it wasn't even close. I needed 5 to 10x what I was making a month to live the lifestyle I wanted to live. So then we can look at options then to figure out how can we figure out a way to scale or grow something to get to, and whether that's in a company or starting your own company to get to that number to
Hmm.
really live the
And
life you want to
and I
live.
think and I think to push that exercise, a step further, I think it's also interesting to ask ourselves, no matter the stage of growth that your business is in, what you said, right? What do you want out of life for sure? How
Yeah.
much is that going to cost? Definitely. But also, like, just the thought experiment of, like, okay, let's say you had it, like, you have it, you are rich,
Hmm.
you have the house, you have the cars. What do you do on a day-to-day basis now? Like
Yeah.
that, I find super interesting because it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, what are you deciding to do on a daily basis if you have what you wanted? And sometimes you
Yeah.
realize that, there are elements of what you're currently doing that, you would continue to do, or perhaps some others that you might not. And so
Yeah.
basically, because otherwise I feel like we're always going to want something more, and there's always going to be that next thing. But if we focus on, like, okay, let's
Yes.
say we had all those things, what do we do then?
Hmm.
Or how do we feel at that point? Well, what if we could start feeling that way now? Like, what if we could start working now to get to a point where the functions that you would not want to, be involved in are delegated, and the ones that you do want to get
Right.
involved in, you continue to double down on. So this is fun, man. This is fun, and I think it applies regardless of the stage of growth that someone is at. I just had someone on the show the other day that actually, scaled her management company very fast to 50 properties or so, and then she
Hmm.
realized she was miserable, that this was not what she wanted to do, and she
Yeah.
managed to sell her operation relatively fast in a matter of, I think it was 4 years total that she started, grew, sold, right? And
Yeah.
so, she sold because she asked herself the question that you're referring to, of, like, what do I want out of life? And if that wasn't it
Yeah.
anymore, well, let's make decisions accordingly. So, listen, Ryan, I could keep you here for
Yeah.
hours. This has been a lot of fun.
I know. I know.
Got to wrap it up. But thank you so much for having taken the time. How can people connect and stay in touch?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably best. It's Ryan space Leake, Leake, or you can check out our website, host, HOST, Del, DEL, Casa, CASA.com. And then if you want to check out the program that I now coach for and I was coached through, it's STR Secrets. So yeah,
Awesome.
just STR, like the
Awesome. Thanks
the
for sharing
acronym
that.
all your listeners know. And yeah, you
Thanks,
can
man. Thanks, man. This
reach
has
out
been a lot of
personally
fun.
too.
This has been a lot of fun, and let's
Yeah.
definitely stay in touch. We'll see you in Austin. I'll be there probably in
Yeah,
April, and yeah, look forward
absolutely.
to chatting soon. Have a good one.
That's it. Yeah, thank you for the time. I
Thank you.
appreciate you
Bye
having
bye.
me.